Thank you very much, Caspers. It's great to have the opportunity today to share with everybody what our plans are for the project over the next few years. So let me start my presentation. First, I'll give an overview of the project, and then I'll run through some of our plans on how we will sequence the work and how we're going to package the work and how we're going to contract the work. In total, we've divided the project into alignment, fixed objects, rail systems, and then testing the system and opening the line in 2026. For the alignment, detailed work is ongoing, as we've already mentioned. It will be finished in stages, and that will then lead to the procurement of the construction and delivery. Now, that process has already commenced over the course of this year, with the main construction alignment starting next year and running for the next 4 or 5 years. And again, it will be divided into a number of packages. The next area is the fixed objects. These are the stations, the freight facilities, maintenance centres, and so on. Design work on these has already commenced. And as we heard from the Minister, contracts have been let for the Riga Central Station and shortly be let for the station at Riga Airport as well. Now, Riga Central Station is probably our most complex part of the project to deliver. It's an existing station on the 1520 gauge railway. There's going to be a combined station. So first we have to move the tracks and everything in relation to the existing station before we can then construct the new station and integrate the two. It's a long and complicated construction project, and that's one of the main reasons why it's one of the first bits to be let. But the other fixed objects will go into the design and construction phase very soon. So following on from these, we have the rail systems. Obviously, we need to do the infrastructure first before we can install the systems on them. The design work on these will kick off later this year as we get on board consultants to help with the design of all the different elements to allow us to start the procurement and installation in a couple of years' time. And then we get on to the final phase, the testing commission. This will be done in stages, in incremental parts, until we can test and prove the entire railway, and then we can start operations in 2026. So that's an overview of the project as a whole. Now let me try and explain a little bit about how we're going to build it. As I mentioned, the design really drives how we get to the alignment construction. So let me talk you through that first. So we have alignment design contracts, as has already been mentioned, for the entire railway from Tallinn in the north to Kaunas in the south. The first sections of the detailed technical design, or DTD, will be completed in the first quarter of 2021. This is a section in the south from Kaunas heading north and a section in the middle of Estonia. These are the two areas where construction will commence once the design is complete and we can get the permits and we can allow construction to commence. Now, the permitting and approval process varies a little bit by country, so the timing of when we'll start construction will vary a little bit, but these are the first two areas where we'll get going. 6 months later, we'll then complete the design for 4 more areas, 2 in the middle of Latvia around the Riga area, the northern section in Estonia connecting into Tallinn, and then the other section in Lithuania connecting all the way up to the Latvian border. So we'll be moving into the construction phase on those areas in the next wave. And then finally, for the end of 2022, we will complete the design along the entire line from Kaunas all the way up to Tallinn, allowing us to start letting construction packages for the works in the rest of the areas as well. So that's the kind of sequence on how the alignment construction will roll out, starting where the design is complete and then carrying on as the design completes in other sections. Now, I mentioned this is from Kaunas to Tallinn. There are 2 other sections of the line for which, as Agnes mentioned earlier, special planning is ongoing or is being planned right now. So this is from Kaunas down to the Polish border and also from Kaunas over to Vilnius. So once the special planning is complete for those, we can start the detailed design work and then move into construction on those sections as well. So that's how the design work is going for the alignment, but there's a lot more to the project than just alignment. So this gives an overview of the project as a whole, similar to what Agnes mentioned, but maybe in a little more detail. So we've divided the line up into sections, and those are the sections I've just run through. But there are a number of fixed objects as well. 2 passenger stations in Estonia, 2 in Latvia, 2 on the main line in Lithuania, and another one in Vilnius as well. We have multimodal terminals spread along the line, and we have maintenance facilities and control centres as well. So there's a number of different objects in addition to the main line that all require planning, design, construction. And then of course there's the rail systems. We'll have signalling, tracks, communications on all of the other systems needed to operate the railway. So this is kind of the whole scope of what needs to be delivered in the 3 Baltic countries. But it's not just in the Baltics. Rail Baltica connects to Poland and to the rest of Europe as well. And so in parallel with what we're doing, our colleagues at PKP PLK are delivering the Polish elements of Rail Baltica, and their work is progressing really well. The first section from Warsaw northwards is already complete, and planning construction is ongoing for the rest of the line. They have about 360 kilometres of alignment to deliver, and it's well underway. It will connect at the border, allowing trains to run all the way from Tallinn through to Warsaw and beyond into the rest of Europe. So this is a key part of the project. It's the link to Warsaw and beyond. Now we're working closely with our colleagues in Poland to ensure that all the interfaces at the border work, the signalling system works across border, power supplies are uninterrupted and so on. So trains can run effectively all the way across Europe. On this slide, I want to try and explain how the work's divided up for delivery between the different contracting entities. Because certainly when I joined the project early this year, I was a little bit confused as to how it all worked. So the first thing to understand is the kind of dividing line from the track. So from the track and below, that work is delivered by the national implementing bodies. Everything above the track, the rail systems, signalling, comms and so on, is being delivered project-wide by RBRail, by our organisation. So that's kind of the first thing to think about. There's a dividing line at the top of rail. So for the bit above rail, about the systems that we're delivering, we're currently in the stage of developing all those systems, and they'll lead to contracts for system-wide systems as the design progresses. But the bit that requires the main focus now is the infrastructure. So from the track down, that's where the focus is, the construction side, and that's where the design focus is right now. So there are 4 implementing bodies. In Lithuania, you have LGI. In Latvia, you have EDSL. In Estonia, you have RBRail. These are responsible for the alignment and the fixed objects in the respective countries. And there's a few small sections, cross-border sections, that RBRail is directly responsible for, but it's a small portion of the alignment. So in terms of the contracting approach, there's a slight difference between the alignment and the fixed objects. On the alignment, the detailed design is being delivered by RBRail, and then the individual implementing bodies will be responsible for the construction in these areas. So there'll be construct-only contracts, generally based on FIDIC Red Book, and there'll be lots of different packages, and the line will be divided up into numerous packages. We're working with the implementing bodies to develop this packaging strategy, what's the best way to deliver all the different elements and so on along the alignment. Then we come to the fixed objects. We have the stations, the depots, facilities and so on. There'll be a mix of contracting types for these, depending on complexity, on exactly what's required in each of these. So we'll probably be using some FIDIC Red Book and FIDIC Yellow Book for design and build as well on these fixed entities. There's one more element as well that's worth mentioning. Because of the scale of the project, we've identified the opportunity to maybe do some centralised sourcing of various elements of the project. And these will be centralised through large procurements where they provide benefit to the overall delivery. So as RBRail will be rolling out a centralised procurement approach for key elements, these will be things like the track, the ballast, and elements that are repeated numerous times along the line where we can really get some economies of scale. We started the consultation on this. Last week we had a number of very useful sessions with suppliers of all the different track elements, sleepers, fasteners, ballast and so on. Those consultations have really been useful to us and help us moving forward rapidly in putting together these centralised procurements so we can get these elements delivered to the implementing bodies. Now, let me switch to what we're doing in the short term over the next 18-24 months in each of the countries. Firstly, in Estonia, the main focus here is fixed objects. As Agnes mentioned, they've started on the stations, the design work will commence on those, and we're going on with a number of other fixed objects as well, freight terminals, depots, and we're also looking at a dry port too. So a big part of the focus in Estonia is going to be fixed objects, but things are going to carry on the alignment as well. Some construction has already started on some railway bridges, and this will carry on. There's up to 17 more that we plan to tender out in the coming months. There are also a few green bridges that we need to get started on as well. And there's some really big utilities we need to get moving on. There's a gas pipeline, there's some big electrical crossings that we need to move as well. So we'll get going on tendering these, getting these utilities moved in the near future as well. So that's what's going on in Estonia. Let's move to Latvia. In Latvia, the focus is very much on the stations, as has been mentioned already. Riga Central Station is really complicated, and for that, the design and build has already been let and the work's progressing. But there'll be a number of other packages of work that's needed as well to be delivered to support that. We will then let the contract for Riga Airport Station, which is also quite complex. Anything linking to an airport is always quite complex. So the procurement for that's ongoing. We'll also need to procure some supervision services to oversee this as well. And I guess that's something worth mentioning for all the construction packages. In addition to the construction works, there'll also be consulting services which we'll need to provide, some of the engineering supervision services during the construction phase as well. From the alignment point of view, we've been doing a lot of value engineering on the alignment in Latvia, and there are a few areas where we think we can provide a better solution. But if we do that, we'll need to reassess environmental impact as a result of the changes. So we're going through that phase at the moment. But the alignment in the centre section, we're getting close to being able to start construction. And so some packages where the design isn't going to change, we'll be able to start the procurement process by the end of this year. Then finally, in Lithuania, as you heard from the Minister, the work here has already started in the Kaunas area, and there's a section under construction, which is great news. There's more development going on around the infrastructure maintenance facilities in these areas and everything else at Kaunas node. So that's really good to see. Work's going to start on the main line from Kaunas going towards the Latvian border next. You may have noticed in the news last week, the Lithuanian implementing body LGI has started this procurement process. They started doing a market consultation on the first lot of this, which is around about 475 million euros worth of work. There are 9 lots planned to be let for the first 59 kilometres of this alignment. Most of it's embankment and a few small structures, but there are some other structures as well, including a bridge over the Neris River, which will be included in here. And as I explained before, to use in this infrastructure, we've also got the track installation as well. So within all these packages, there will also be a package for the track installation. So as you can see, the alignment is moving forward fast, and the procurement phase is really starting on construction in that area. So that's it for the civil elements. Now we turn to the rail systems, which are moving fast as well. Recently, we launched a tender for the engineering services for the E&E, the electrical supply system, overhead lines and so on. Later in the year, we'll be doing the same thing for the rest of the systems, the ERTMS, the communication systems, and all the other rail systems that are needed to operate the railway. We're also getting on board all our assurance and independent checking. So we've been out to tender for a NOBO, and we'll be doing this with other areas going forward later this year as well. The other thing we want to get on board is a shadow operator to help us to provide some operational input into the design and construction of the railway, and so we'll be seeking one of those in the near future too. Finally, I'd like to come on to the subject of one of the questions, the different contracting options that are under consideration. There are three different ways we're looking at contracting for the main construction works. The first is using a traditional fixed price lump sum approach, which applies very well where you can have a clear definition of scope. The scope's not likely to change and everybody can really understand risks at the point of bidding. The second is a remeasurable approach, where with a bit of a twist, we can add in a target price, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then the third option we're looking at is more of a prime contractor approach, where there are benefits that can be attained from grouping packages together and letting one overarching coordinating contract to deliver all those packages. So let me run through them in slightly more detail. First, fixed price contracting. This is fairly well known and straightforward. At the tender stage, we provide details of what needs to be constructed. The tenderers then have to go and estimate the cost of that, what their overhead is, and what risk margin they want to put on, what profit they put in, and then they give us a price for building it. We don't normally get the breakdown, we just get the total amount, and we don't know how much they put in terms of risk. Could be 10%, could be 20%, who knows. But as the client, we end up paying that total risk margin, whether the risk occurs or not. So if it's a risky kind of area, we can end up paying too much. The risk largely sits with the contractor. So the second approach is about a remeasurable type contract, but with a bit of a twist. So at bid stage, there is an estimated cost that the tenderer puts together. That's their bid. And along with that, they put in their fee to cover their profit, their company overheads, and these are included in the tender. But they get paid the actual cost. So if they're successful, they get paid what is actually spent. Now, with the target cost approach, if the actual cost varies from what it was at the bid stage, there's a mechanism to share any cost overruns or any cost savings. So if the actual cost comes in above the amount that was at tender stage, estimated cost, then we reduce the fee a little bit. So they feel a bit of the pain of the cost overrun as the fee comes down. If the actual cost comes in underneath what was estimated at the bid stage, then we share some of the gain and we give them an extra fee above and beyond what they actually bid. So this is a mechanism of sharing some of the risks, and it's proved to be very useful in reducing the risk margins that are built in at bid stage and only really paying for the actual risks that occur and not the risks that were predicted at bid stage and never happen. So this is a mechanism that we're keen to use in some areas on the project. And the final mechanism is the prime contractor approach. So this is where you have a prime contractor who takes a risk over delivery of a number of packages, and they charge a fee for taking that risk, but their fee is at risk. So the value of the fee can reduce down if they fail to deliver. Generally, the reduction in fee is not around the total cost. It's normally around a series of KPIs, which focus a lot more on on-time delivery. So if they're late, the fee gets reduced. And this is used quite often in projects where the time element is quite critical. For example, this was used in delivering all the facilities and infrastructure for the London Olympics, where there was a prime contractor and their fee was at risk over achieving the delivery dates for all the infrastructure. And the other thing with the prime contractor is that they'll step in to deliver if any of the subcontractors fail in those elements. So they have to be prepared and able to actually ensure the delivery of all these packages and step in where needed. So it's not just a consulting role, it's very much a contracting role as well. They need to be able to ensure delivery. And so this is used in solutions where there's a real need to deliver on certainty. And we certainly need to deliver on time. 2026 is an ambitious target. It's one I'm sure we can deliver to, but we're going to have to work really hard to get everything delivered by that date. So prime contracting is a mechanism that could help us in some areas. In terms of how we're going to contract it out, we're going to be using the FIDIC suite of contracts. These are proven worldwide and are perfect for delivering the infrastructure works like ours. So that's the main foundation of how we'll be doing our contract, both for the construction and the consulting services as well. So consulting services will be done using FIDIC Whitebook. So let me just come to a conclusion and summarise what we're going to do for our delivery. We remain on track for opening in 2026, and our plans are all set around achieving this date. Up to now, we've focused rightly on the design stage, but we're really in a transition period of the project, and we're transitioning from design into construction. We will become a major construction project over the region over the course of the next year and beyond. The division of construction responsibilities is already agreed upon between the implementing parties, and we're now working on the detailed delivery plans, how we're going to package it up, how we're going to do logistics, how we're going to do contracting. So over the rest of this year, into next year and beyond, we can start rolling out these delivery packages, and you'll start to see more and more of them advertised, as I mentioned, as we go through. So these major procurements on the structure will really start commencing in the next 12 to 18 months. We want to find the best way to do this, and that's why we're looking at different contracting options. And that's where we really welcome your feedback as well on the options presented today, or feedback on anything that's in my presentation, because we really need your help to ensure we can achieve these dates. And with that, I'll hand back to Kaspers.